Oh, that was epic. Hey guys, Luton here, and we're back with Scriptum because this weekend is going to be another Scriptum playtest weekend. It's going to start at 9 PM British time on Friday, that's 4 PM Eastern time in the US, and it's going to carry on until Monday morning British time, 9 AM then as well. As we saw last time, a lot of interest in this game, I guess because of its authenticity and just the general atmosphere, tactical nature of the game itself. A lot of people really jumping on board with this. If you want to get in on the playtest, you will need to pre-order the game. If that's not something you want to do or you don't feel comfortable yet, no problem, just watch the live streams, wait, and then see when the game comes out whether you want to get it or not. But do remember, if you do want to pre-order the game, you're always going to be able to refund that, and that should be something which is feasible for you. But at the end of the day, your choice whether you want to get on board with this or not. Now, after the last playtest, they did another closed event where they got some more feedback and made a few tweaks and changes. But since then, they've added some other changes. There's some small things in here and there's some big things in here, but I'm going to run through it and we'll discuss over all of these bits and pieces. So let's go through some of the gameplay changes that they are bringing in. One of the first things is a 5-minute timer now before off-map support is going to become available, so that should make things a little bit more interesting at the beginning. Also, capturing a flag will now add 15 minutes instead of 30 minutes, so you're not going to have these ridiculous amounts of time to actually push up and get onto the flag, and that should have the benefit of making things a little bit more urgent for the attackers and simultaneously a little bit easier for the defenders to actually have the possibility of actually defending. So that's going to be quite an interesting change. But there's another thing related to that which we'll talk about shortly. Another change is that there's going to be less parallax effect on scopes. If you don't know what parallax is, just go look it up. But it's basically the way your eye deals with scopes at distances and how you kind of move around and the accuracy of those scopes. So essentially it should make things a little bit more accurate, I suppose. Now also, riflemen carrying less ammunition, that's going to be an interesting one because a lot of guys when in these prolonged firefights often saying that they needed ammo to come back in onto them. But again, the high damage nature of this game means that, you know, potentially you're going to be put down most of the time before you run out of ammo anyway. But also with that reduced time extension on the capping, it might make it a little bit less significant as well. But I don't know, interesting to see how that one's going to impact the game. We'll just have to find out. A really big mechanical change is that character sprinting is now going to be based on player kit. So basically what you can assume for that is that if you're taking like an LMG role, you're going to be slower than a guy who is just a rifleman. I would assume, I don't have these specifics on each class, but I'm going to assume that if you're like a medic or anything which carries more kit than a basic rifleman, you're going to be a bit slower. So that's going to be something to take into account. Now you can see that as a positive or negative. What you got to remember is the game is aiming for authenticity, and so those kind of factors are something that they want to be able to put into the game. One small weapon tweak is the Kar 98 is going to have 15% improved bolting speed. Main bases will now have protection, so that's obviously designed to stop people dicking around, shooting each other, maybe being shot at, etc, so another positive change. Now some of those new changes which are coming in, and some of these we spoke about on my interview that I did the other day with the devs. Wrecks can now be shoveled down. You can right click them or you can explode them with TNT. This should prevent enemy defenders from blocking bridges and so on and making them permanently closed in terms of roads, blocking towns off, etc. But remember, there's still going to be a danger because you still got to get up to them and remove them, so it's actually still a legitimate tactic to use wrecks to block stuff off. Also for pontoons crossing rivers like on Drill, those can't be destroyed any longer. Now one really big change coming in is that the defending team can now respawn on the next active flag during the lockdown timer. This was something I actually spoke to the devs about on a DM at the end of the last playtest, and I said, like, you know, this feels like it needs to be a thing because often the defending guys are just getting rolled over constantly, and it's just like a race to the finish from the start of the map to the end of the map, and then that's where they hold the line. And the funny thing was when the devs got back to me, they actually said, yeah, we've thought about this already and it's already coming in. So now we actually get to try this out, and it's going to be pretty interesting to see how that changes the play, especially now that the attacking team, when they cap a flag, it's only going to add 15 minutes. So the defenders are going to be able to reinforce more effectively. Now remember, that's only for people respawning. So it's not like if you're somewhere else in the field as a defender, you can just respawn there automatically. You'd have to kill yourself in order to do that, which isn't always the most advisable thing. However, if people are dying, like if they just had a huge assault at the end of a flag position, it's going to mean that they can immediately spawn in on that town. And that does make a huge amount of sense from a gameplay perspective to ensure that there's at at least some defending presence in a town to try and hold it. It's going to stop that steamroll effect somewhat where, you know, people are just rushing in jeeps and stuff to the next base, and maybe sometimes when, you know, the attackers are feeling like a base is about to go down, if you've got some dedicated squads, they might already be in a vehicle and they rush to that next town and get onto it basically before the defenders can even fall back to get there, because the defenders may be still trying to contest the town and the attackers are feeling like they're going to get it. They move people up ahead of time to get onto that. So this mechanic change is a really big deal, and it should completely alter the flow of gameplay, and it's going to be really interesting to see how that actually functions and whether it's beneficial, whether it's a positive or whether it's a negative as well. Now, another change that people may like or dislike is that the suppression effect is going to be a bit more punitive, which basically means a bit more punishing. Now, there's no further details on specifically what that means, but basically suppression is going to be more significant and harsher. It's already pretty harsh, so it's going to be quite curious to see exactly how that affects people, and I think generally speaking suppression isn't something that people like, but remember authenticity, and they want to create that effect of being punished by incoming fire. And I guess they also want to make it so that, you know, if you have an LMG guy who is laying down fire towards a group of enemy, they actively can't just stand up and then snipe him. You know, they want to make it so that the suppression effect actually has some impact on what's happening, because otherwise there's not a lot of point there. Another change is that the MSPs are now going to be active in friendly, non-active cap zones. Okay, friendly non-active cap zones. So that means if you're near to a town and your faction control it, but it's not actually in progress in terms of being contested, you're going to be able to use that MSP there. That can be really beneficial on some maps, and it also is affecting things in terms of just where you could have MSPs around. So that's a big change. That's also going to affect things a lot. A small gameplay change: vehicle tents are now visible on the map. Again, just a small change there, but something which will assist people. Okay, now a few additions. There's going to be 3 types of AP impacting on metal surfaces. That's another thing thrown in there. There's going to be new effects on wheels based on their surfaces that they're driving over. Another addition, tank crew headset, is going to be added to the player model, and 3 types of mortar explosion effects are going to be based on their caliber. Also, new German canteen model and animation. So just a few small visual upgrades. Okay, I've also picked some core fixes that they've added since the last playtests. One of the biggest ones, server not switching map. That was of course plaguing the last playtest, where at the end of a round you would just have to essentially quit out, rejoin a server, find a new server, which is problematic for a lot of people. Now it should probably switch and roll over to the next map in the rotation. Another change is that Revive and Bandage are now listed as Revive on the scoreboard. I presume that's to try and better represent how people are contributing, not just by revives but also by bandaging other people. They have removed chromatic aberration on iron sights for obvious reasons. Various tweaks to the foliage models. I hope that's to do with the frame rate improvements that we'd spoken about in the interview, where some of the foliage models were outdated or incorrect. The mortar no longer will have unlimited ammunition, so they can't just sit there infinitely firing and firing and firing without actually having logistics brought into them. Previously on the Drill River map you could just drive through the river and it wouldn't do anything. Well, now that will actually do damage to vehicles, so if you try to do that now you're going to wreck your vehicle and it's going to be gone. The repair station can now only be made near an FOB or a construction truck, and there is also now a deployable limit for mortars near an FOB. Now lastly, 2 other significant changes which will have an impact on just generally how things play out. They are confirmed but they're not fully tested yet, so again could be problematic, could maybe not be working properly, but they are going to be in on the testing for this weekend. There will be a mute button on the end scoreboard, and this should prevent people spamming, you know, soundboarding, doing stupid crap. If you just don't want to hear people talking at the end, then you can just mute that without any issue. And then finally, kicking players out of a vehicle when they're no longer in an armoured section. This was causing issues because sometimes people want to be in a tank, but the trouble is in the game, if you're going to be in an armoured section, if you're going to be driving tanks, you actually need to cooperate with the guy in that vehicle. You can't do it without communication, you can't do it without cooperation, it's just not really feasible. So you actually have to be listening and working together in tandem in a kind of symbiotic way. So the idea with this change is that if a guy gets kicked out of the section by whoever is leading that section, then if they were already in the vehicle previously, they could just stay in that vehicle and you couldn't do anything about it. Now you'll be able to kick them out of your section, and you'll be able to also actively kick them out of the vehicle as well. Again, as discussed before, I think some people might see that as a positive, some people might see that as a negative, but that's the change and that's the way they're going with it. Now I'm probably going to be doing some streaming on the Saturday, guys, as I did before, so if you want to come and check that out, come and join me. It's twitch.tv/Luton, drop a follow, and then you're going to see when I'm going to go live. But there's going to be a lot of other people streaming, a lot of other people playing this weekend, and I have some videos and stuff coming out next week, of course. I'm going to stay on top of this game, guys, because I've been enjoying it very much, and I've also been enjoying actually working with the devs, because they're actually, you know, communicating, actually giving giving out relevant information. And as you saw in that discussion video I did the other day, they're pretty open and they're pretty clear and they're pretty transparent about actively answering critical questions, which is something that I greatly value and greatly appreciate when it comes to development of a game. So thanks for watching as always. I hope that information has been helpful and interesting. Check out this weekend, guys, and let me know what you think down below in the comments. I'll see you next time for some more Postscriptum.
It looks like a capture point.